Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Voice Like a Lion podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Pemberton, and today we have someone that I think we're going to find really, really interesting. I'm excited to get to learn from him, his experiences, and to get to hear about his new book coming up. So, this is Gary Laney. He is the CEO of Success Masters, a 35-year business veteran, serial entrepreneur, and author, now two-time author. Gary is a two-time best-selling author. Oh, is this story? Is this your third book?
So yeah,
Is this going to be your third
two
one?
that I wrote, and then one I co-authored with. So three, I guess, if you want to count.
Amazing.
Yeah.
There you go. So, Gary's a two-time best-selling author, former high-tech software executive, and a serial entrepreneur, having been personally involved in 20 plus startups. Gary was co-founder and CEO of Trustegridy, a professional networking company which Gary turned into a national organization. He's a dynamic speaker. Gary has presented to and motivated more than 100,000 executives, entrepreneurs, business professionals, sales, and customer support people. Gary, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Nice to have this opportunity to be with you. Appreciate it, Stephen.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you here. I know we connected through LinkedIn
We
because
did.
I saw a little bit of your history and what you've done, and I'm fascinated by your experiences. For me, I've been a business owner for the last 4 years. You've been in business significantly longer. And so I'm excited to get to learn not only for everyone listening, but also, if I'm honest, a little bit for myself too. So with being actually first and foremost, tell me a little bit about Success Masters.
Uh, this is a kind of a holding company that I've had for many years. Actually, when I spoke full time back in my 30s, so it's been a few years. Um, Success Masters was the name of my business,
Mm,
and then the internet was just coming around. I know you weren't around back then, probably, but the internet. Didn't allow you to buy domains obviously back then, so we didn't have any domains. So I used it in my local state at the time, and then I lost it, and then about 30 years later I got it back. So Success
wow.
Masters is now becoming the forefront of my business. It hasn't been in the past. It's always been kind of the holding company of up to 7 businesses at a time. And so now it's becoming the forefront for my speaking business, for my advisory business, for the events business that I'm developing. And mostly, just so you know, during COVID, I sold off most of my assets. I didn't think the events business was going to be around for a while, and it wasn't. But now it's coming back, storming back. And so now I've put Success Masters back in the forefront. I think it's going to become a good thing for me. So it's a good name. It's good. I've always been a good name. I've always been into motivation, training, development, entrepreneurship. And so I think it's a good name for that. So I think I'm excited to use it.
I mean, that is an excellent name for that. Success Masters is an amazing domain name. Also, I heard you talk about events. So that's something that is one of my companies. It's Holoco. We specialize in online events. So I would love to hear what kind of events do your companies, what do they do? What do they put on?
So I'd love to know more about yours as well. So we'll have to exchange information after. So when I was in the networking business, I started this co-founded a business in 2013. In 2020, I sold it, and we did events throughout the nation, in small pods, if you will,
Yeah.
with business people that wanted to get together. We formed groups, and every week I was speaking at a couple of events. This one is going to be different because the book I wrote, The Power of Strategic Influence, all about self development. It's about networking. It's about building your brand. It's about becoming who you can become on the influence side of strategic, meaning it's not transactional. It's not a social media influence we're looking for a relationship based, trust based type of influence and relationships. So the next book that I'm about to announce, and I don't have the title quite nailed down yet, but it's going to be about influential leadership, which is the name of my newsletter. It's the name of the events I'm creating. So I'm moving quickly into the leadership side of events, not just motivational, not just entrepreneurship, but leadership. And that can run the gamut of entrepreneurs who obviously are leaders and wear many caps. And I've done that with 20 different businesses I've been involved in. But it can go to professional leadership, executive leadership. And in fact, the first event that is going to be live, that's going to be coming out announcement wise for April 5th, coming up this year, in conjunction with the University of South Carolina. I'm excited. That's the first time I've really mentioned this event, but we're getting close next
Well,
week to announcing it at large. We're working with the business school there. They're hosting it. They're partnering with me. And we have a great lineup of speakers, including Nando Cesaron, who I interviewed to be featured in my new book several months ago. He's the president of UPS US, an amazing leader, and has experience that everybody needs to know about. So he'll be not only featured in my book, but he'll also be featured as a keynote speaker at my event. We also have other amazing executives involved, including as well as the dean of business and so on. So I'm not going to give the whole agenda because I haven't really
Yeah.
announced it, but you can look for it. It's called the Influential Leadership Symposium, and we'll have a half-day lineup of speakers, including myself, to talk about the new book, and I'll be doing a sit-down, hopefully, with some of them in a panel discussion. But great people involved, senior executives that have been involved, for 20, 30, 40, 50 years,
Well,
including myself. I stick myself in that realm. So excited about that. And that could become the model for many other opportunities like that in the future. But I'm excited about, I love online. And so I definitely want to collaborate with you on that. But this is what I've been doing in the past. I'm kind of old school. I love the live element, not only live, but in person. And
mhm.
so it'll be great to get together on a personal basis and see how that goes.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's an incredible way to discuss it, especially your new event. I think that that's incredible. The University of South Carolina. Now, I'm from Tennessee, so I'm a little bit against the University of South Carolina since I'm a Tennessee Vols fan, but
Okay.
we'll let it slip on this time.
Let it
We'll let
slip.
it pass.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
there's something that you mentioned, and we absolutely will connect afterwards. I'll talk about the online event stuff. I love online events. Obviously, if I have a whole company around it, I also love in person. In person is incredible to me. There's an element, if I'm honest, that you lose because I can't physically, even if we were having this conversation in person, I can physically go with the flow a little easier. We can see each other. If the audience is interacting, they new things now. You've got hybrid events, which is people in person and online. I think those are great because those people online can still see us being solely in person or solely online. It's a hybrid, a mix of both. But you
Yeah, I like
talked
that.
about something with success masters. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I like the hybrid approach because it allows your audience to be larger. People can join from whatever time zone. You might have to get up early or late, stay up late. But and I was involved in a worldwide event, virtual event, a couple of months ago. I'm going to be involved in another one. So I was they called me the inaugural keynote speaker, which I thought was inflated on my basis. But it was fun nonetheless. I was their main keynote. We had 45 speakers around the world
Well,
from I think 5 different continents. It was really a great way to do that, and you couldn't possibly do that, in person unless people travel. So I think the online version is really cool. This one I'm talking about though is specifically meant for a local community with a local
yeah.
business school and the University of South Carolina, and some people flying in like me. So about half of us are flying in, the other half are local, and all the business people. We're also inviting the business students from the school. They don't know that yet, but they'll be
Mm,
invited to come. Have a certain limit that would be able to come in and not be charged for it. They'll have a free entrance. So I think it's a cool model, and we're trying to bring the business community together with the students, our future leaders, right? So we can
yeah.
help see where that goes. I think it's going to be a nice dialogue.
I love that. I love that you're including the students because you're not only being able to leverage experience and the other speakers, but also you're able to pour into the next generation of entrepreneurs and business leaders. I think that that is an amazing thing to do, especially now. I think that that is the one aspect of being in business and especially being a leader that I've seen kind of fall to the wayside with the influencers and things that you see online is a lot of times people will become a leader or build a business, but then they'll turn around and they're trying to sell stuff to people instead of actually turning around and saying, how can I actually help the next generation move forward? And that's one of the biggest things that I've tried to do over the years. Every time I learn something, I try to turn around and teach it, especially if it's beneficial, if it can help somebody, because I've been there. I mean, I don't know how much of my story you know, probably very little. Most people know very little of my backstory, but
Well, a little bit.
I
I
started a
want to.
business. Yeah, I
I want to
started a
know more
business
though.
very
So,
young.
yeah, go ahead
Yeah,
and tell me. I'd love to know.
started a business very young. Started a business at 20 with my wife. and we lost everything within 3 months because I quit my job. I
No.
was the only one making money at that time, and so I quit my job, came home. We had no skills and no financial backing, nothing. So we lost everything really, really fast.
Oh, no.
And I thought I was done with business forever. And then I spent 5.5 years in a corporate job, moved up with no college degree, no connections, and moved up in a corporate job from the basically right above the janitor as a warehouse worker, all the way up into mid management. And after 5.5 years, my wife had started an Amazon company, which then did really well, did $1 million in a year. And I said, you know what? The margins were terrible. The margins were 10%. And we had a financial backer that took about half of that. So we left. I left my corporate job. We went fully into business together to just restructure the whole thing. Because I thought, okay, I'm in supply chain and logistics. If I can restructure it to where we can get 20% without and cut back on what the financial backer's getting, we're actually making a significant amount of money comparatively to what I was doing. So that's what I did, and that's kind of my backstory in a nutshell. Then we had another business. I went to 1 million after that one, and so we've made a decent amount of money online. But every time we made money, we would turn around and we would just give it away. Hey, this is what you do. This is what you don't do. Watch out for this. Because I've been in those spots where I've been just somebody help me, somebody give me my next step. So I love that your event is doing that for the people that are there learning about business.
Yeah, so hopefully the idea is to say, future leaders, listen, because we've learned a few things and we want to
Yeah.
transition so that you have a better start, hopefully, than what we have. And, I was fortunate in the respect that my family had a business I grew up in. So my father was an entrepreneur, my grandfather was an entrepreneur, my great grandfather was an entrepreneur, and so I grew up in that setting with people that didn't work for other people, that worked for themselves, and
Well,
just knew at some point I would become an entrepreneur as well. I really felt like I was always an entrepreneur. I just had to be given the opportunity. But the
mm,
fact that you jumped into it, without hesitation, you and your wife at 20 years old, come on, that's great. And then got these valuable lessons that you can teach other people going forward. Sometimes, I think that's even better because what did you have to lose? Not a lot because you didn't have a lot of assets to begin with. But you tried it, you failed, and you learned a lot from it. Then your wife started something that became significant as far as a small business. You just had to figure out how to make profits from it.
yeah.
And now, you're working together. I mean, my wife has been involved. So I've owned 12 businesses. I've got a 13th I've started. I've been involved
Well,
in others as a startup executive, but she's been involved in several of them. And we've had a lot of stressful times. We've had some really great times during the business, and one that we built for her specifically. And it was a great experience because she's a very talented writer and editor. And so she was involved in one of the first online fashion kind of magazines or blogs ever, called shishimi.com. Back in the day, was very popular. So I just really admire what you've done, Stephen. Um,
thank you.
I had the training. I grew up in it. My dad trained me on every aspect of the business. When I went to get my MBA at Northwestern Kellogg, which is this outstanding school,
Hmm.
just ranked number two this year. They've been ranked number one many times as a business school. But I already felt like I had my first MBA. And so what you've gone through on your own with you and your wife, you're getting experience a lot of MBA students never have. They come into it very smart, academically, but not experience wise. And so they might have theory in their minds and they might, be willing to work hard. And a lot of them do really well because they're smart anyway. But the fact that you've had the experience, you've had the opportunity to lose when you didn't have a lot. I guess if you were worth 10 million, you lost all 10 million, would have hurt a lot more,
Yeah.
you know. So, maybe you lost a few $1,000s. I don't know what you put into it, but well, you have your whole life ahead of you. So I really admire what you did. I think more young people should jump in and both feet and lose a few things and then come out smiling, saying, that was a great experience. I didn't lose a lot compared to people that have a lot of money,
Yeah.
but I'm ready to go after it. The key is not to fall off and then be deflated and walk away. The key is to have a survival mindset, which is what I teach in my book. The first chapter is be prepared because life's going to get tough, and if you fall off you should jump back on it, but you should start with a survival mindset that says no matter what life throws at me, I can survive. I've already made the commitment. I've already made a decision. So failure or not, I'm actually prepared for failure. Let it happen. I'm going to continue regardless. And then you start working on, what that means to you going forward. But anyway, I really appreciate that you shared what you went through, and you have, my gosh, so much ahead of you. So I'm really excited for you.
Thank you. See that I love that that is your first chapter because I wish I would have read that first chapter before getting into business. That would have been really good because I think it's so interesting with people my age and especially younger now is people who are 20 or even up to into their 30s is they think that everyone's watching them. So they're just afraid to fail. So that if they launch a business, if they have this idea, they want it to be successful because they're afraid of what their mom, their dad, their best friends are going to say about them, the people at their church, whatever it is. But honestly, nobody's watching you. Like now is the perfect time to
Yeah.
fail
Yeah.
because and just giving a new shift, a new perspective to what failure looks like. Failure is not the end of your life. At 20, when we lost everything, we had to move in with family and live in this basement with gigantic spiders. And I had a 6-month-old son, and I thought I
Oh,
thought that was
wow.
the end for me. I told my wife, and I've told this story a few times. I was depressed. I had suicidal thoughts because I thought that that was it. And I look back on that and I go, that's insane. I was 20. It's like I was 20 years old and I thought that my life was over. So just being able to reframe what failure means, failure is just you win both ways in business. If you start something and it fails, so called, you learn something, right? If you start a business and it's successful, guess what? You learned that way too. But just reframing failure to learning and just being willing to fail early and often, even in a business like Google. Google is a massive juggernaut, but Google has a graveyard of ideas of different apps, of different websites, of different things that they've done. Does that mean that they're a failure? Absolutely not. We still say, hey, go Google it. But the reason why they've been so successful is they're willing to fail early and often.
Okay, so there was a guy that I admire who talked about his mentors. Do you have a mentor helping your business? He said, "Yeah, I have two. They're called trial and error." I mean, that's really mentoring. The best way to get mentored is to make a mistake, to try something, see where you're at. It gives you a definition for your position, and you step back, you resize the situation, you make a plan, you move forward, and that's all business is. It's reiterative. So you can go. I call it sensitivity analysis. That's what we learned when I was in business school. You make a little change and see where it goes, and you stop, improve, move forward. And you don't try to change everything at once. You don't try to come in with all the answers. You come in with one that sounds like a pretty good idea. You try it, doesn't work. You make a little adjustment. You keep going, and that's just all it is. I mean, even Elon Musk threw everything at the wind, everything he had from PayPal, $170 million
Yep.
or something, into three companies. And fortunately, they all worked out. I mean, SpaceX, he was down to the last launch, had no more capital, and somehow it succeeded. And now it's worth $100 billion. I mean, how we can learn a lot from his lessons, on what he did.
There is a book that somebody sent me. It's called The Founders. If you ever get a chance to read The Founders, it talks about not only it's the journey of all the founders of PayPal. So the reason why I really enjoy this book, I'm about halfway through it, and it's a decent sized book. But what I
Okay, what is
love
that?
about it is it talks about their stories. I didn't know that Elon Musk had actually. So we hear about his successes now and going all in from the PayPal stuff, but I didn't know that he had actually gone all in on a different business that ended up becoming PayPal. He had a business called Zip2, and Zip2, whenever they exited, Zip2 sold for over 300 million. He got, I think, 21 million of it. He started what was X.com then, and then he poured in, I think, almost over half of his entire net worth at that time into this business. So he poured millions of dollars into this thing, which then eventually they merged with another company called Confinity. It becomes PayPal. But I just think that
Yeah.
that kind of mindset, because of being willing to, most people would walk away with 21 million. I had an angel investor on the show who one of
Yeah.
his companies exited for 21 million. And he said, and I asked him, I said, why did one of your portfolio companies exit for 400 million? And why does another one only exit for 15 million? He said, well, a lot of it is not actually the success of the company. A lot of it is the owner, the founder. They decide, hey, if I can exit this thing for 30 million and go home with 20 million, then why would I not? That changes my life, changes my kids' life, my great grandkids' lives. And so just to hear of a founder who won, like technically making 21 million on exit, that's pretty good.
It's
and then
really,
deciding I'm ready to go back in with all of it to build something that he then PayPal, same thing. I'm going all in again. There's a lot to learn from that.
we don't all have to become Warren Buffett or Elon Musk. And so, first of all,
Yeah.
let's just put that out there, because not everybody has the expectations, and some people have different priorities. But Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway is the name of his first business that he acquired, and it failed. And for some reason, he wanted to take that name and prove to the world that he could succeed. And so everything underneath that umbrella has been marvelously successful in so many ways. And Elon Musk, I admire him so much that he put everything into it. I heard that when he invested in SpaceX and Tesla, et cetera, that the guy was like living in a trailer or something.
Yeah.
He had nothing to live on. His cash flow was zero. And the guy just had this headstrong attitude that he was going to succeed in some way, giving SpaceX, I think, like a 10% chance or something. I forget what his estimation was, but it wasn't a huge number. But it turned out. So the guy now is considered a genius technologically. He's willing to take the risks. He's willing to bring the right people together. He knows how to build the right kind of team. I mean, you learn that. That's how you learn. But at first, you have to first try it out on yourself. You have to learn on your own merit. What am I capable of? How, can I withstand the struggle, the adversity, all the things that come along your way? And so that decision up front, that's why I always say it, because I've managed and trained thousands of salespeople. You have to go into this thinking, okay, this is the law of averages. Don't get discouraged because someone said no. Don't get discouraged because something you worked on, fell and didn't go forward. You have to look at the perspective of the future and say, first one could be a win, could not be a win. It doesn't really matter. It's learning the business. It's learning the skill sets, and that's why my second book that's coming out is going to be about leadership competency. So everybody gets into a business. They have one competency, something they're really good at that helps them succeed. It might be their technological ability. They program really well. They might be good at sales. If you want to continue and sustain your leadership, you have to learn how to learn other competencies too. How do you relate to the people in your business you're hiring unless you have some idea of what they're doing? You don't have to
Yes.
be an expert at it. You have to have some level of expertise in terms of understanding. So when you get together with them, they relate to you, you relate to them, you can give some perspective, you know that they're on course, and they look at you as an inspiration. So I think that's why I'm focusing on that so much now, because I think one win, one opportunity that went well does not define you. You might decide to get out and retire when you're 25, but look at the waste, the opportunity. You'd have to do much more. Maybe you want to sock away 15 of that and take 10 million and do something marvelous, that could transcend what you did the first time. But your life is to be lived, and you have to treat it like it's a living aspect of your thought process. Otherwise, you give up. You'll probably die when you're 30. I don't know, but so it's important to have that kind of perspective, I think.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly because of a couple different things. So with Amazon, Facebook, Shopify, that's where our success was originally in e-commerce. And what's fascinating about e-commerce is there's two different sides of it. There's the side that all the people online see, where it's, oh wow, look, you're traveling all the time. You're able to do whatever you want to for the most part. You're making really good money, and you see it from influencers. Well, here, go learn how to drop ship or whatever it may be. But you don't see the other side of it, which is in a B2C setting. It's fantastic because you're getting these micro wins, a lot of them a day. For us, it was 300 orders a day.
Yeah,
And
wow.
so you're getting micro wins all the time. But honestly, it doesn't, if you hit the jackpot like we did, which is what it felt like when we went from Amazon and we transitioned over to Facebook and Shopify, because in the matter of time that transition happened, within 3 months, we went from zero to doing close to $100,000 a month. And when that happened, we didn't build the resiliency. With B2B, like you said, there's the law of averages. So how many times are you getting on calls? How many times it's okay if people tell you no. But when you're so used to 300 orders a day, 400 orders, and you go from that to switching into a B2B side, which is what we have now, it's much different. But the thing that I do love about what you talked about with leadership is I love the concept that you just said, and I don't want people to miss it. when I was in corporate, my first endeavor into leadership, they let me be over a entire warehouse in East Texas. And at that time, I think I was the youngest manager in this Fortune 500 company. At that time, I was 23. And what was amazing about it was I came in and it was the worst location in the entire region by far. And so I come in and it was a absolute dumpster fire. But what I did, because I'd worked my way up in that same vertical, that when I got there, I was able to go to each and every one of the employees and ask them just a couple simple questions. Hey, what do you love about working here? What do you hate? What do you wish was different? And I was able to learn what I could fix. There were certain things I had to go to management for above me to get, get the right approvals. But if there was things that I could handle, I fixed it. And I didn't just tell them I knew the job. I didn't just rally them and say, you guys got this, you could do it. I was out there with them. I showed them, I know what you feel like. I've been there, I've done this. And so I could promise you that if you do these things I'm asking you to enact, it's going to get better. And we went from the worst location and then within 90 days, we were the best. And all
Wow.
it took was buy-in. So I love that concept that as a leader, it's about getting the buy-in and showing the people that you're not just there to talk to them. You're not a talking head. Most people on the front lines, especially frontline workers, they hear the talking heads all the time, but they want to know, do you care? And if so, how much do you care? That's what I've seen from frontline workers. They just want to know that you care and how much you care.
Hey, Stephen, I've managed a lot of people, and I remember one of my managers one time told me, she says, my experience is the higher you get in an organization, the dumber you get. I said, what does that mean? She said, because, you lose contact, you lose perspective of what the business is about. You're not in the trenches. You're
Mm,
not, you're not relating to the people doing the work. You're just looking at the numbers. You're waiting, for the number and the report so you can go to your boss and say, I'm doing a good job, get a pat on the back. But, the leaders that do the best are the ones that are influential. And I like that term because you can't be influential unless you're inspiring people. You can't be influential
mm,
unless you are competent and they respect what you know, what you do, and your example. You can't be influential unless you're in the crowd,
yeah,
and um, we're not going to get into politics here, but there are politicians and business leaders out there that are much more influential because they relate to the crowd. They get involved with them.
yeah,
They relate to them. They talk to them on their terms. They don't just give you the next buzzword and say learn it because we have to act like we're in business. They relate to the people because of the job they're doing, and they can contribute if they have some knowledge of that. So I really think you have to be, Benjamin Franklin is one of my heroes because he learned at a young age, 20 years old, by the way, he decided that he wanted to perfect his character. Now try that one for size.
wow,
Character is a very, very wide attribute, and it includes dozens of things that you need to do to become the strong individual and have the traits that people respect on a variety of levels. But at age 20, he said, there are 13 virtues I care about because I think my behavior in those 13 things are not acceptable. So every week I'm going to spend a week working on one trait, one virtue. In business, I'm trying to teach business people, and I have for 40 years, by the way. My salespeople, we used to do the same thing. I'd say, okay, pick 13 things. They said, why 13? Well, I said, well, how many times does 13 go into 52? Oh, wow, it goes in 4 times. That's kind of cool. So every week we're going to work on one of the things you care about. I don't care if it's closing. I don't care if it's learning how to open a discussion. I don't care if it's about how to approach and make someone comfortable when they first meet you. Work on that for an entire week. Do nothing
wow,
else that entire week, but work on that one attribute. The next week you go to number 2. The next week, number 3. To get to 13, now you have 13 weeks of working on your attributes 1 week at a time, which is a lot of emphasis, not 10 minutes. Like a lot of people say, I have got these 10 things I want to work on. I'm going to work on them 10 minutes a day each, or an hour a day,
yeah,
whatever. Try taking something you care about and work on it for one solid week and see how you feel at the end and evaluate yourself. Did I learn from it? You may not perfect it. You won't, obviously, but you will understand it much better than you thought you understood it before. And then do that whole series 4 times a year, like Benjamin Franklin did until he was, toward the end of his life. And no wonder the guy was a statesman. No wonder he was an inventor. No wonder he was you know, uh, so talented in so many things. He'd worked on it his whole life. So I think we have to learn from people like that. And there are people today alive that do stuff like that, but I think he was an amazing example. I'd like to use him.
That's genius. So talking about having it 13, it breaks down into 52 4 times, and then doing one thing a week. I know for a fact. Question: is this in your book?
Yes.
Okay, so I
Well,
need to get this
some
book.
stuff's coming. It's gonna bleed out because I'm thick into it. My head's into it right
I,
now. So yes.
I need to get this book because that is one of the most genius concepts I've ever heard, especially when you talk about personal development. Personal development is a hot topic. That's something that a lot of people are involved in. But just thinking about that on a granular scale, right? Because everyone wants to have, like you said, I got 10 things I want to work on this week. But what if it was just one thing? What if you just were working on one thing every day? I think that getting it on a granular level and saying, this is what I'm focusing on, this is what I'm working on this week, it's easier to see, well, I improved in that area, or I didn't, I learned, or I didn't. Because instead of it being 10, because 10, you're going to be scattered. One thing is much easier to keep up with than many things. So I
So,
love that. So when your
so
book does release, I will make sure to update it and have it in the show notes because I want
cool.
people to get this
We'll do
thing.
that. I'm excited to do that. So listen, I'm not talking about tasks. We have dozens of
Yes.
tasks we have to work on. Okay, you can't get
Yeah.
away from doing the business. We're talking about self-development, which you mentioned. How
Yeah.
do you develop yourself? How you can't divide yourself. Excuse me. I'm going to learn how to sing, how to write, how to become an artist, and I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day at all those things. Imagine if you said for 1 week, I'm going to learn how to do art, and you have somebody that actually mentors you in some way. Remembers trial and error, and then I'm going to at the end of the week look at it and say, how was I, at the beginning of the week compared to the end of the week? Is there a
Yeah.
difference? And I know there's no question that it would be better and different and improved. And then 13 weeks later, you do it again for a solid week. If something is super important to you and you have to, and it's critical to your business, maybe you focus on it for 2 weeks or a whole month. But the concept is 13, and it is genius because it allows you to repeat it and never stop. It's continuous. It's perpetual. And in the end, there's enormous results. I've seen it in my salespeople, how they've taken something they really wanted to work on, and then next week we're going to next, and over a 3 month period, seeing how they, enlarge their capacity, and it's just enormous. It's just really cool.
Well, so Gary, I want to give the audience an opportunity to connect with you. How would people connect with you?
Well, a couple of ways. So the name of my book is also the name of one of my websites. So the power of
Mm,
strategicinfluence.com. That's my first book. It was a #1 Amazon bestseller. This is my baby because for 35 plus years, I taught concepts from influence that I learned from Stephen Covey way back in the day when he was alive and just becoming popular, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But of course, his was kind of a philosophical approach. I needed to turn it into a practical
yeah.
approach so that my salespeople could actually do something with it, not just get psyched up. And so that's why that book came out. I interviewed 12 people that are tremendous leaders, six men, 6 women. My new
Well,
book, I'll have also a website for it, but just so you know, it has 2 men, 2 women because I have 4 sections. One of the leaders is Nando Cicerone, who I mentioned, president of UPS. David Meltzer's in the book. Cindy Bigelow's in the book, from Bigelow Tea. And then we also have Jody Richards, who's the CEO of Process Technology. So those are the 4 that I focused on in this second book. They exemplify the principles that I'm trying to teach as far as competency. So take Benjamin Franklin on a character initiative, and now let's substitute that character word with competency. So how do we
well,
become competent with 13 that we choose? There are hundreds of competencies you could
yeah.
master, you maybe not master, but at least acquire. But there must be 13 that really matter to you most in your life and in your business. And so to get a hold of me, you can go to the powerofstrategicinfluence.com. You can go to my personal website, which is garyclaney.com. You can also go to Amazon, where I've got my books, and there's ways to read about the author, get a hold of the author. So probably the best ways, and I'll have a new website up, in the next 2 months as well. And so, by the way, the people we're looking hopefully to invite, if you're from South Carolina or thereabouts within a metro area and you want to be able to attend this event, The event's called Influential Leadership Symposium. And both business students and business people can attend that event. It should be a great event.
I love that. So everyone listening, that will all be in the show notes so you can see it. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's in the description. But before I let you go, Gary, I always ask this question, which is, tell me a funny story about a time that you're in leadership.
Wow. Okay. I've not had that question for a long time, I don't think. Funny story. So I was involved in a startup. We were doing retrofit things in California because the utility companies back then, PG&E and SoCal Gas, would give you credits if you installed things that help you save energy. And so, startups, you do crazy things, and people don't sometimes realize what you have to do to make things happen. So we were doing this in California, even though I was from Utah, and we were on flights going back and forth. We were trying to develop this business, and so one morning we got in late. We had nowhere to sleep, so we slept in the office, and we just slept on the floor. I mean, I can't believe we did that. And then about, I don't know, it was 40 minutes before the flight. Somebody woke up and said, "We're gonna miss our flight." It was kind of like Kevin, on what's the Christmas movie?
Yeah, the Home Alone.
Home Alone. Thank you so much. I haven't thought about it. I couldn't thought the title until just now. But they woke up and they're rushing to the airport. They leave Kevin behind. So that was all that. So no one got left behind, but we literally threw our coats on. We had blankets on the floor, and we ran to the airport. Made it. By the time we get out the door, we had 30 minutes to get to San Francisco SFO, and we were probably 15 or 20 minutes away. That's not possible today, because back then 9/11 hadn't happened. You did not have to go through security. You could get to the airport and you could run into the plane, and we were like the last people on the plane. We made it.
Wow.
So that's my funny story, I guess, for the day. But the trails. The travails of trying to become an entrepreneur, trying to make something happen, I guess.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I love that, because that reminds me of the first time after I moved halfway across the country from Tennessee to Fort Worth, Texas. I was flying back to have Thanksgiving with my family, and I showed up early. I got off of work really late because working in the warehouse, we were working 12 to 14 hours at the minimum. And I remember specifically, I was like, okay, my flight's at 7 a.m. I don't want to miss it. It's already 3 o'clock in the morning. So I went there early. I'm sitting at my gate. I'm looking, it's 5 o'clock. I go, okay, so we should start boarding pretty soon. 6 o'clock rolls around, 6:30. And I go, there's nobody here. This is weird. I look, the gate had changed. And it was all the way in the other side of DFW International. So I barely made it. I was the last one scooting in. So I completely understand that.
Well, DFW is not an easy airport to get around either. You have to take all those trains and things to get to your
Exactly.
gate.
And I got lucky. There was a train pulling up right as I was running up the stairs, and I was able to just jump on and go. If I hadn't been able to do that, I would have missed it.
Wow, good job. Well, it's the fun of entrepreneurship and trying to do something to make flights. But flights are a little more difficult today, so you better plan ahead. So don't take my story and try to do that, because it probably won't work.
No. Gary, thank you so much for joining me today on the show. For everyone listening, make sure that you not only listen to what Gary's telling you, but to take advantage of the books that he has for sale already. And if you're in the South Carolina area, be sure to see him at his event. And when his new book comes out, it'll also be in the show notes. I'll make sure to update it. Gary, thank you again for joining me here on the show.
Likewise, Steve. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. I'll look forward to the next time.
Thank you for joining me on Voice Like a Lion podcast. This one was shared with Gary Laney. And if you enjoyed it and learned anything about leadership and you want to learn more about leadership, be sure to check out my other episode, which I'll have linked out, where I got to interview David Spitulnik, where he has spent 40 years in business and in C-suite corporations like Motorola. And you will get to learn even more about what it means to become an impactful and influential leader.